The first 3 years, mobile internet is a dream to many actually. So our SIM cards easily cost around $700 to $2,000 US.
Yangon in 2020 is not Yangon in 2012. Yangon in 2012, the power went out months on end. People didn't really go out. There were curfews at different points where people had to be home.
Even before 2013, we were under different military regimes, and gradually after 1988 and beyond, they tried to change. The technological sort of a revolution or transformations occurred in 2013 that literally changed the system in Myanmar.
So 2011 and 2013, there were already some startup founders that are mainly web-based. A majority of these early founders were mainly repats, and they were, in fact, I call it the bravest ones, right? Because they were doing startups in turn, when infrastructure was bad, internet was expensive. They were more bootstrapped. There were also more services, like people were more in a cash cow, slow growth business model, right? Things like selling POS softwares, ERP softwares, HR softwares. They are a bit of a low burn, cash cow type of IT, service-based companies.
There was a few people that had launched startups or tech companies, mostly focused on Yangon, and there was still not a vibrant tech ecosystem. There was still not sort of a community of tech startups that were doing all sorts of things. In 2013, the Myanmar government issued licenses to 2 new international telcos. They both launched in 2014, and very, very quickly, the cost of SIM cards dropped dramatically. Data services were launched, so now people could go online, and that was a really important turning point, right? We very quickly moved from almost nobody in Myanmar having good quality internet access to most people in Myanmar having good quality internet access. That all happened in a very short period of time. And actually now, Myanmar is a country in Asia that has the highest smartphone penetration.
Suddenly we have 21 million social media users, right? That became, and 20 over million mobile internet users. So addressable market probably 5 to 10x immediately over the years. And with fast growing market, right? People are more daring, right? They're going to go for bigger addressable market.
Gold rush, that's the term that was used back then. Myanmar is a gold rush. It's one of the last frontier markets. You just roll out of bed and you become a billionaire, right? If you look at all the news articles from them, that was what it was. And so you had the first crop of startups. There were a bunch of attempts to build the Facebook for Myanmar. I think that was MySquare. The attempt to build the Google for Myanmar. I think that was Bindes. Most of them failed not because they weren't run by good people. They were run by really smart and talented people for the most part. It was because it was too early.
So starting a startup anywhere is really hard. Starting a startup in Myanmar is perhaps extra hard, because we're still a new and a young tech community. There are lots of things, there's lots of parts of the digital and technological infrastructure that hasn't been built out yet.
Given that we are not one of the most well-funded country in Myanmar, so I really, hats off to all the entrepreneurs and startup founders, because it's challenging, but they have the courage and the entrepreneurship to do that. What really touched me is that a lot of them know the difficulties that they face and some of the unfair environment they have, being in this country, but they still believe in the future of the ecosystem and the market itself, and they still chose the difficult route. It's something that really impressed me a lot and I respect a lot.
The people who we see are really good at this stuff are not necessarily the ones with the best degrees or the most corporate experience. It's really the ones that are just ready to roll up their sleeves and get things done at any cost, right? But I think it's particularly true for entrepreneurs here in Myanmar, because you don't necessarily have the same support system that you have in other countries. It may not be as easy to find investors or other types of support. So being able to just get things done on your own and being really good at finding people to work with you who are also good at getting things done and have that kind of hustle is really, really critical.
When I talk with startup founders here in Myanmar, the most distinct Mendoza line between each of them is their previous experience. So there's a notable difference from when somebody has come from an established company that kind of taught them the best practices. It's difficult to teach somebody to make pasta if they've never been to Italy. And we noticed that a lot of the startup founders that kind of came from, the Grabs and the Gojeks of the region, when they go to start their own startups, they kind of have a very significant advantage. It's very difficult to start a startup if you haven't kind of seen and touched the field and kind of gotten absorbed and exposed to those best practices.
I started 2 businesses, including this one, and another one is the technology business. And I started this mobile restaurant review platform, but we failed because we didn't get any customers and we didn't get any clients who use the platform. So we didn't understand our customers and the real situation at that time. Basically, most of the startup at that time is similar situation like us. So we didn't have enough capacities. We didn't understand our customer, we didn't understand the business plan, and we never used those documented, strategies, and we didn't have those.
So the challenges other founders in Myanmar face are just running out of money. What happened in Myanmar is you had people with very good sort of paper pedigrees, right? So you had Stanford graduates, ex-Google people. Their playbook was to follow the VC model, right? This standard playbook, which would seemingly, that's what smart people would do in a lot of countries. Where they're expecting, even in a frontier market, they're hoping for 10 to 20% month over month revenue or user growth. Myanmar, not ready for that. In order to hit those targets, they blew up their burn rate, right? They hired a bunch of people. So what happens when you're not hitting your targets? Well, the investors start to get mad. And when investors start to get mad, they start removing founders from their own companies, which is what happened multiple times. So I think that's the big, difficult challenge for other startups. If you're not going to take VC and PE money because you can't hit those targets, how are you going to get the money to capitalize and run your startup? That's the challenge.
I think one of the biggest, if not the biggest challenge around the future of the tech ecosystem in Myanmar is skills. Whether you are a startup, a small business owner, or a big corporation, you're going to need people who really understand how technology works and how to create technology products and services to cater to the current generation and the next generation of tech consumers in Myanmar. Right now, we don't have the necessary talent pool available in Myanmar. We, in the tech community, in the tech ecosystem, we have a role to look at how can we help do that. But the public education system has too. And it's really important that they look at, well, what are the skills that are most in demand? Not just now, but what are the skills that are going to be in demand a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and adjust the education system to address that.
We have a very outdated education system, so you won't be surprised that most of the good developers are either self-taught or they're either repats, right? Either they work somewhere in Singapore or maybe in Thailand or Malaysia. So given the gap between local education and of course overseas education, there's definitely a gap in terms of talent, in terms of unequal opportunity in Myanmar. But currently, education ministries, and of course, thanks to various accelerators here, we see more and more younger, fresh grads and of course younger founders that have never educated overseas and also have never worked overseas are willing to take the risk, having the similar talent and similar grit to hustle your way through. Of course, this is only happening within the last 2-3 years, right?
When we launched that Accelerator Program in Myanmar, in Yangon, in 2016, nobody had done anything like this before. We weren't really very sure how this was all going to pan out. Were there anybody who was going to apply? Would we be able to find enough startups and entrepreneurs that are actually working on something that we can get behind, that we want to invest in? When we launched this program, we got more than 80 applications. 80 applications from startups and entrepreneurs that were all Burmese, all based here in Myanmar, that were working on tech solutions to some way or the other drive this tech ecosystem and drive the development of technology in Myanmar. That, I think, was pretty impressive. I was very positively surprised about the amount of entrepreneurs and the amount of tech startups that were actually working on interesting stuff.
Many might not know, right? But the current tech ecosystem and the opportunity in Myanmar is really, I think, probably at its best. We always say that Myanmar is like a clean piece of paper, right? Because of lack of infrastructure, lack of regulation, lack of government interference, lack of development in general. We have nothing. And sometimes it's good to start with nothing, right? We are able to rebuild and build, the best systems, right? The best processes. We don't have legacy issues to deal with. We don't have legacy people to deal with. We don't have a legacy system to deal with. We don't have to change legacy behavior of consumers. So this clean sheet of paper is really the opportunity for entrepreneurs here to rewrite the rules, right? Rewrite their market, rewrite the product. I think that there's nothing a better country in Southeast Asia that can try out creative ideas, very acceptive market. Consumers are ready to try it. People are ready to take risks.